Hello there, and welcome to Drift to the Stars. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Whatever brought you here, a restless mind, a long day, a quiet need to feel something settle, you are welcome. This is a place without urgency, without anything that needs to be solved. Just a voice, and some of the strangest, most tender things we know about what it means to feel. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. There is something happening right now, beneath everything you think you know about yourself. Not a mystery in some distant galaxy, not a riddle buried in the deep ocean floor. Something closer. Something that has been with you every moment of your life, so close that most of the time, you simply forget to notice it is there. Your feelings, not as background noise, not as disruption, but as the quiet architects of nearly everything you do, everything you choose, everything you believe you have chosen freely. Science has spent centuries trying to understand the rational mind, and what it keeps finding, gently, stubbornly, is that the emotional mind arrived first, that it runs deeper, that it speaks in a language older than any word you have ever learned. Tonight, we are going to follow that language together, slowly, without rushing anywhere. Your brain makes most of its decisions before you are aware of having made them. This is not a poetic idea. It is one of the more quietly astonishing findings in modern neuroscience. And it changes something about how you understand the word choice. Imagine a river, and somewhere along that river, a bridge. You think of yourself as standing on the bridge, watching the water, deciding which way it should go. But the water passed beneath you several seconds ago. You are watching the wake, and calling it a decision. The emotional systems in the brain, ancient, fast, operating far below the level of conscious thought, have already assessed the situation, already leaned in a direction, already begun moving the body, before the part of you that uses words and reasons and lists has even opened its eyes. Logic does not lead. Logic follows. It arrives after the feeling has already chosen, and it does the work of explaining, of translating, of making the instinct sound reasonable. This is not a flaw. It is the original design. Emotion is faster than thought, because for most of human history, speed was survival. But here, tonight, you have the luxury of slowing down enough to notice. The feeling came first. It always does. Somewhere in the chemistry of a single human tear, there is a signal that other people can detect without knowing they are detecting it. Take a moment with that. A tear is not simply water. It is not simply salt. It is a tiny, precise biological message, composed and released by a body that is trying to communicate something it cannot always put into words. Researchers have found that the scent of emotional tears cried in sadness or distress, causes measurable changes in the people who are exposed to them. Testosterone levels shift, aggression softens. Something in the nervous system of the person nearby receives the signal and responds. Quietly, without any conscious instruction. You have never needed to explain your sadness in full. Your body has been broadcasting it in languages that bypass speech entirely. Picture someone crying alone in a room, believing no one knows, and yet the air around them is gently, chemically full of what they are carrying. The body reaches outward even when the person has gone inward. Scientists are still mapping exactly how this works, and why, and how far the signal travels. But the basic finding holds. Grief has a scent. Sorrow speaks without sound. You were never as alone in your pain as you felt. Most people assume the brain is in charge of the heart. That seems reasonable. The brain governs the body. It sends instructions downward, and the organs comply. The heart beats when the brain says beat. The breath moves when the brain says move. But the relationship between heart and brain is far more like a conversation than a command. The heart sends more signals upward to the brain than the brain sends downward to the heart. More, in volume, in frequency. The vagus nerve, which connects them, carries a current that flows predominantly from the chest upward, not the other way around. Your heart is not simply following orders, it is participating in the conversation. It is, in some real sense, informing the brain of something. What that something is, researchers are still gently unfolding. There is evidence that the heart's rhythm influences perception, emotional tone, even decision-making. That when the heartbeat is coherent and steady, the brain processes the world differently than when it is not. Picture a child pressing their ear to a seashell and hearing the ocean inside it. Now picture your brain, pressing its attention downward and hearing your own heart, already speaking. The chest has always known something. You were built to listen to it. Before you had a word for any feeling, you had a body that was already having it. Every emotion that you have ever experienced arrived first as a physical sensation, a tightening, a warmth, a hollowing, a pressure behind the sternum that had no name yet, just a shape, just a temperature, just a weight that settled somewhere between your ribs and asked to be noticed. The mind names things after the fact. It looks down at what the body has already built and says, this is sadness, this is joy, this is the particular ache of missing someone you have not seen in months. But the body was there first, already holding it, already living inside it, before the label arrived. Think of a map drawn after the journey. The territory existed without the map. The mountain was always there. The river was already running. The cartographer simply came later, with ink and careful language, and tried to describe what the land already knew. Your feelings are that land. They predate every word you learned for them. They are older than your vocabulary. They existed in the body before the mind had the tools to translate them. Even right now, lying still, your body is feeling something. A texture, a temperature, a particular quality of quiet. The mind will name it, but the body felt it first. There is a kind of pain that leaves no bruise and no scar. No broken bone shows up on any image. No inflammation visible under any light. And yet the person experiencing it reaches for the same words that describe a wound. It aches. It hurts. It is unbearable in the same breath they use for the unbearable things that happen to the physical body. Loneliness activates the same neural pathways as physical pain, the same regions of the brain that light up when you stub a toe, when you burn your hand, when the body registers damage and screams for attention. Those same regions respond to the experience of feeling profoundly alone. This is not metaphor. This is not poetic license. The brain, at the level of neural circuitry, does not always distinguish between a body that is hurt and a heart that is isolated, which means that loneliness is not weakness. It is not sensitivity. It is a genuine signal, as real as hunger, as real as cold. The body sounding an alarm, because connection is not optional. Because human beings were built for proximity, for warmth, for the particular comfort of not being the only one. If you have ever felt lonely and also felt embarrassed about feeling lonely, let that embarrassment rest for a moment. Your nervous system was simply doing what it was designed to do, asking, in the only language it knows, for what you need. Language is extraordinary, and also late. You have been speaking your whole life. You have built entire relationships from words, entire understandings, entire versions of yourself that exist only in the sentences you have offered to the world. And yet when you are most fully inside a feeling, truly submerged in it, you find that the words do not come, not because you are not intelligent enough, not because the feeling is too complex, but because language and emotion run on different clocks, and emotion is faster. You cannot fully describe a feeling while you are inside it. The description arrives only after the wave has begun to recede. You look back at where you were standing and say, I think that was grief. I think that was wonder. I think that was the particular joy of being seen by someone who did not have to look twice. But while you were in it, there was only the feeling, raw and pre-verbal and enormous. Researchers studying this have found that the act of labeling an emotion actually helps regulate it. Putting words to what you feel brings the prefrontal cortex gently online, creates a small distance, a little room to breathe. But the label is not the feeling. The map is never the territory, and something in you already knows the difference. You might imagine an emotion as something you fall into and stay inside, like a room with no exit. But that is not what emotions are. Emotions are waves. If you watch one without feeding it, without adding the story, without replaying the scene, without building the argument or the grievance or the fear forward into the future, a feeling peaks and then dissolves in roughly 90 seconds, a minute and a half. That is the natural lifespan of an emotional wave moving through an unobstructed body. What stretches emotion out, what makes it feel permanent and inescapable, is thought, the mind returning to the wound, the narrative that keeps the feeling alive past its natural shore. This was discovered through careful physiological research. The chemical cascade of an emotion, the hormones and neurotransmitters, cycles through the bloodstream and clears in about 90 seconds. After that, what remains is chosen, not always consciously, but chosen nonetheless. Lie still for a moment and feel whatever is present. Watch it without pushing it away, without holding it closer than it wants to be. It is moving. Everything in you is always moving. Feelings are not walls, they are water. And water, given time and open space, finds its own quiet level. Right now, somewhere, a face is moving in a way no camera has ever captured in full. The human face contains 43 muscles, and the combinations they can produce, the micro-expressions that flicker across a person's features in fractions of a second, add up to more than 10,000 distinct configurations. Each one a different shade of inner life, pressed briefly to the surface for the world to read. Most of these expressions appear and vanish faster than conscious thought. They are gone before the person wearing them has registered having felt anything. A shadow of amusement, a ghost of unease, a flicker of tenderness so quick it barely existed, and yet existed completely in the instant it was there. Researchers who study facial coding have documented expressions that appear only in specific moments of human experience, combinations so precise and so rare that most people go their whole lives producing them only once or twice. Your face is a language with a vocabulary larger than any spoken tongue, and the people who know you well have learned to read the words you never planned to say, the slight tension at the corner of the mouth, the particular quality of stillness before something shifts, the way your eyes carry what the rest of your face has already tried to hide. You have been communicating since before you could speak, and you have never fully stopped. Long before you learned the word for mother, or hunger, or home, you were already full of feeling. Infants feel emotions before they have words. Before the architecture of language is even being laid down in the developing brain, the baby is already experiencing something that functions like joy, like distress, like the particular comfort of a familiar warmth returning after an absence. There is a version of you that existed before any word you have ever used. A self that could not say, "I am afraid," but was afraid. That could not say, "I feel safe now," but felt it, completely, in the loosening of every small muscle, in the way the breath slowed and deepened and stopped fighting. That wordless self never left. It is still there, beneath every sentence you have constructed about who you are and what you feel and why, still responding, still reaching toward warmth and pulling back from cold, still knowing things before the knowing has a name. Scientists who study infant emotional development describe the early months of life as a period of pure felt experience, not chaotic, not confused, simply unmediated. Feeling without the filter of language to organize it into something manageable and small. Your first language was never spoken aloud. It was a warmth against skin, a rhythm of breathing nearby, a sound that meant safety before safety was a word you owned. That language is still alive in you. It speaks every time you feel something before you understand it. There is a question that sounds simple until you sit with it. How many things are you feeling right now? 1, maybe 2. a quiet tiredness, perhaps, and underneath it something that might be peace, or might be the beginning of it. The mind tends to assume it is feeling one thing at a time: sad, happy, worried, relieved, clean categories, separate rooms. But the emotional life does not actually work that way. You can feel more than one contradictory emotion at the same time. Researchers call this emotional complexity, or sometimes mixed affect, and it is measurably more common in people with greater emotional experience, greater exposure to loss and love and time. The longer you live, the more capable you become of holding opposites without needing to resolve them. Grief and relief at the same moment. Love and exhaustion woven together so thoroughly you cannot locate the seam. Pride in someone leaving and the hollow ache of watching them go. These are not confused states. They are not signs of inner contradiction. They are signs of a mind spacious enough to hold the full texture of real experience, without forcing it into something simpler and more comfortable. A house with many windows open will feel the wind from several directions at once. That is not disarray. That is what it means to be fully inhabited. Stand at the edge of something high. Your heart does something. Your breath does something. Your palms, perhaps, do something. The body moves into a state of heightened readiness, pupils widening, senses sharpening, every nerve quietly reporting, attention here. Now imagine the moment before a concert you have been waiting months to attend, or the morning of something you have wanted for a very long time. The body does almost exactly the same thing. Fear and excitement are chemically identical inside the body. The adrenaline is the same. The cortisol pattern is the same. The heart rate elevation, the altered breathing, the feeling of being slightly outside your ordinary self. These are not two different biological events. They are one event, wearing two different names, depending entirely on the story the mind decides to tell about it. This was demonstrated in careful studies where people reframing anxiety as excitement before a difficult task performed measurably better than those who tried to calm themselves down. The arousal was not the problem. The interpretation was the variable. You have stood at the edge of something and called it fear, when it might have been the body preparing for something it genuinely wanted. The feeling was not lying to you. It was simply waiting for a name that fit. Think of a piece of music that has undone you, not overwhelmed, not simply pleased you, undone, reached inside and moved something that did not know it needed moving, left you sitting somewhere afterward in a slightly different relationship to the room around you. Music does something to the brain that very little else can replicate. The feeling of being moved by music activates the same reward circuits as food, as physical warmth, as love. The nucleus accumbens, a region deep in the brain associated with pleasure and motivation, responds to a melody resolving, to a chord changing in the way you hoped and did not know you hoped, with the same chemical release it produces for survival rewards. Beauty is not a luxury the brain tolerates. It is something the brain is built to need. The chills that move down the spine during certain passages of music, a phenomenon researchers call frisson, occur because the brain is predicting the next note and being gently surprised, anticipation and reward colliding in a fraction of a second. Even now, if you recall a melody you love, something in the auditory cortex stirs. The memory of music is itself a small version of the music. The body carries every song it has ever been moved by, quietly, without being asked. You remember what happened, but your body remembers how it felt. These are stored differently, in different systems, on different timescales, with different rules about what can be accessed and when. Factual memory, the kind that holds dates and names and sequences of events, is fragile. It fades, distorts, rewrites itself each time it is retrieved, like a document that changes slightly every time it is opened and resaved. But emotional memory is stored in the amygdala, an ancient structure that operates largely outside conscious control, and it is durable in a way that factual memory is not. It does not need a narrative to survive. It does not need you to rehearse it. You may walk into a room and feel uneasy without remembering why. Encounter a tone of voice and feel something tighten in your chest before a single thought has formed. Hear a particular combination of sounds and feel safe in a way that has no story attached to it. That is emotional memory, living below the narrative, older than your ability to explain it. This is why healing is not simply a matter of understanding, of knowing why, of tracing the logic of what happened to what you now carry. Understanding is part of it, but the body holds what the mind explains, and the body heals on its own timeline, gently, in its own layered way. There is a feeling most people recognize but fewer people examine. It arrives when you see something morally wrong, something rotten in the literal or figurative sense, something that violates a boundary so deep you cannot always name the boundary, only the feeling that rushes in when it is crossed. Disgust is one of the oldest emotions in the human repertoire. It began as survival, a response to contaminated food, to disease, to anything the body needed to reject in order to stay alive. The lip curls, the throat closes slightly, the stomach speaks. The body says no before the mind has finished forming the sentence. But somewhere across the long arc of human development, disgust migrated. It moved inward. It attached itself to ideas, to behaviors, to moral violations that have nothing to do with food and everything to do with values. The same ancient circuit that kept your ancestors from eating something dangerous now responds to cruelty, to betrayal, to things that feel deeply wrong in a way that bypasses argument entirely. Your moral intuitions are not purely rational. They are partly visceral, partly old, partly a survival system that learned, over millennia, to recognize a different kind of contamination. When something feels wrong, before you can explain why, your body is not being irrational. It is consulting something ancient. You cannot make yourself blush on command. Try, if you like. Think about blushing. Will it to happen? Instruct your face to flush with color. Nothing. And yet a memory, the right memory, a moment of unexpected embarrassment recalled with the full texture of how it felt, can send blood to the surface of the skin before the thought has finished forming. Blushing is governed by the autonomic nervous system, the same system that controls breathing, heart rate, digestion, the background hum of the body that continues without any conscious instruction. You cannot override it with intention. You cannot fake it to the standard the body sets. Which means that a blush is one of the most honest signals the human body produces. When someone blushes in your presence, they are not performing. They are not choosing to show you something. They are being shown by their own body, involuntarily and completely, that something is happening beneath the surface. There is a paradox here that researchers find genuinely interesting. Blushing often occurs when someone feels exposed, seen too clearly, and yet it makes them more visible still. The thing the body does to respond to being seen is to make itself more visible, as if the body, in its deepest code, knows that there is nothing to hide. That being seen, fully, is safe. When you push a feeling down, you might expect it to diminish, to lose some of its force through the simple act of not acknowledging it, to fade from lack of attention the way a fire fades from lack of air. But that is not what happens. Suppressing an emotion does not diminish it. Research across multiple decades and methods has found that the effort of suppression, the active work of keeping a feeling from the surface, tends to increase the physiological response the body is producing. The heart rate rises, the skin conductance changes, the nervous system, which was already responding, now responds to the added weight of trying not to respond. The feeling does not go away. It goes sideways. It finds another route. Think of pressing your thumb over the end of a hose. The water does not stop. It finds the pressure elsewhere. It finds a seam. This is not a reason to perform every feeling loudly and immediately. Timing matters. Context matters. The ability to hold a feeling while you find the right moment is a genuine skill. But holding is different from suppressing. Holding is aware. Holding says, I know you are here. I will make space for you when the time comes. Suppressing says, "You do not exist," and the body, quietly, disagrees. Memory softens things. Not always, not in every direction, but nostalgia, the particular ache of remembering somewhere or someone or some time that is gone, almost always arrives warmer than the original moment was. The summer you remember as golden probably had rainy afternoons you have since released. The friendship you miss so purely likely had its frustrations, its silences, its ordinary difficulty of two people trying to understand each other. The childhood home that glows in memory may have had cold floors in winter and a particular tension on Sunday evenings that you no longer think about. The feeling of nostalgia is almost always warmer than the original moment was. This is not dishonesty. It is biology. The brain preferentially consolidates the emotional content of memories, and over time, it tends to retain the warmth and soften the edges. It is, in some researchers' framing, a mood regulation tool, a way of sustaining a relationship with the past that is livable, that does not wound every time it is visited. Memory edits toward the light, which means the life you are living right now, the one that feels so ordinary and incomplete, may one day be the memory someone else carries as a warmth they cannot fully explain. You are building a nostalgia that does not exist yet, quietly, in the unremarkable middle of an ordinary night. When someone you care about is frightened, something happens in your brain, not a thought about their fear, not an intellectual recognition that they're experiencing distress, something more immediate than that. The same neural regions that would activate if you were frightened yourself become active as you witness their fear. Empathy is not a metaphor for sharing experience. At the level of brain activation, it is a genuine version of it. Mirror neurons, and the broader neural systems they participate in, create a kind of internal simulation of what another person is going through. When you watch someone in pain, your pain-associated regions stir. When you see someone smile with genuine warmth, your own facial muscles may shift almost imperceptibly in response. To feel with another person is to genuinely live a partial version of their moment. This has limits. The simulation is not the full experience. Empathy is not the same as suffering alongside someone, and researchers are careful to draw that line. But it is also not simply imagination. It is the brain doing something ancient and generous, reaching across the space between two bodies and saying, "I'm going to try to understand what it is like to be you right now." You have been doing this your entire life. Every time you have sat with someone in their difficulty and simply stayed, that staying was never nothing. It was a form of love the brain performs without being asked. There are moments when something vast enters your awareness, and time does something strange. Not stops exactly, not slows in any mechanical sense, but stretches, opens. The ordinary pressure of the next minute and the minute after that falls away, and you find yourself standing in a kind of expanded present that feels both entirely real and slightly outside the normal run of things. Or does this? The feeling of encountering something vast, whether that is a mountain range, a piece of music that seems too large for the room it is playing in, an idea that rearranges something fundamental in how you see the world, measurably slows the perception of time. Researchers asked people to recall experiences of awe and then estimate time intervals. Those in an awe condition consistently perceived more time as available to them. They felt less rushed, more patient, more willing to give their attention to something without watching the clock. This is one of the quietly generous properties of wonder. It is not only an emotional experience, it is a temporal one. The moments that take your breath away are also the moments that give you more of time itself. Think of the last time something genuinely moved you into stillness. The world did not slow down, but you became large enough, briefly, to hold more of it. And in that holding, there was something that felt remarkably like peace. Beneath the surface of how you feel on any given day, something quieter is being decided. Your immune system is listening, not in any mystical sense, in a very precise, documented, biochemical sense. The same hormones and neurotransmitters that carry emotional signals through the brain and body also interact directly with immune cells. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which suppresses immune function over time. Grief alters the activity of natural killer cells. Loneliness measurably changes how certain genes related to inflammation are expressed. Emotions influence immune function. Grief and joy reach all the way down into how the body fights illness. And the relationship runs in both directions. A body that is fighting infection sends signals back upward that shift mood, reduce motivation, increase the desire to withdraw and rest. The immune system talks to the emotional brain. The emotional brain responds. You are not a mind attached to a body. You are a system in constant conversation with itself. Every feeling ripples outward into biology. Every biological state ripples inward into feeling. This is not a reason for anxiety about whether you are feeling the right things. It is simply an invitation to understand how thoroughly woven together you are. Your joy is not only in your mind, it is in your blood, in your cells, in the quiet chemistry of a body that is doing its best to keep you whole. In the very first hours of life, before the world has had time to teach anything, a baby does something that researchers find quietly extraordinary. A newborn, shown a human face wearing a particular expression, will shift their own face towards something resembling that expression. Not perfectly, not with adult precision, but the direction is there, the impulse is there. Babies mirror the emotional faces of caregivers within the first hours of life. This means that connection, genuine emotional attunement between two beings, is not something learned over months of careful practice. It is present from almost the very beginning. The nervous system arrives already oriented toward other nervous systems, already reaching. Before the infant knows what a face is, before they understand that the shape in front of them is a person, before language, before recognition, before memory, they are already responding to the emotional signal being sent. You came into this world already trying to connect. That impulse did not appear later, after you learned enough to know it was useful. It was there in the first hours, in the first movements of a tiny face trying to say, I see something in you that I recognize, something that resembles what is happening in me. Connection is the very first thing a human learns. Or perhaps learns is the wrong word. Perhaps it is simply the first thing a human is. There is an intelligence in your body that most people rarely think about. Tucked within the walls of your digestive system is a network of roughly 500 million neurons. Not a metaphor for sensitivity. Actual neurons. Actual nerve cells, forming a system so complex and so self-sufficient that researchers have given it a name that is not meant to be poetic, but has become so anyway. The enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain. This system can operate entirely independently of the brain in your skull. It has its own reflexes, its own processing, its own capacity to sense and respond to the world, and it produces the vast majority of the body's serotonin. The same neurotransmitter that plays a central role in mood, in feelings of well-being, in the quiet background sense that things are, at the most basic level, all right. Your intestines have feelings of their own. This is why emotional states express themselves so directly in the gut. Anxiety before something difficult, the hollow sensation of grief, the warmth of a meal shared with someone you love. The body is not simply reacting to the mind. The gut is participating in the emotional life with its own voice. When you feel something in the pit of your stomach, that is not imagination. That is a second nervous system, ancient and attentive, weighing in on how things are. There are two kinds of smiles. One involves the muscles around the mouth. It can be produced deliberately, on cue, in any photograph, in any meeting. At any moment, the social situation asks for it. It is useful. It is human. It is not, in the strictest sense, dishonest. But it is not the same as the other one. The other smile involves the orbicularis oculi, the muscle that encircles the eye. And this muscle, researchers discovered in the 19th century, cannot be reliably activated by conscious instruction. It responds to genuine positive emotion, to real amusement, to true warmth, and it does so without asking permission. Laughter that is genuine is physically impossible to fake with precision. The sequence of muscle activations in authentic laughter follows a pattern that the conscious mind cannot replicate voluntarily. Actors who specialize in this spend years learning approximations. But the real thing, the laugh that arrives unbidden, that shakes the body with something you did not plan, follows its own order and its own timing. This means that genuine laughter is one of the most honest things a body can do. When someone laughs truly in your presence, you are witnessing something that bypassed performance entirely. Something that arrived because it could not stay in. There is a particular gift in being near someone when that happens. It means the world, briefly, surprised them. There is a moment in early infancy, usually in the first weeks of life, when something extraordinary can happen between a mother and a newborn, held close against her body. The heartbeat of the infant, which is fast and somewhat irregular in those early days, begins to synchronize with the heartbeat of the mother, not immediately, not perfectly, but measurably, gradually, in the direction of coherence. A mother's heartbeat can regulate her newborn's heartbeat when they are held close. The mechanism involves the vagus nerve, skin-to-skin contact, the warmth and rhythm of proximity. The infant's nervous system, still learning how to regulate itself, borrows the steadiness of the nervous system it is resting against. Calm is something one body can give to another. This does not stop at infancy. The research on co-regulation, on how two nervous systems in close proximity influence each other's rhythms, extends throughout life. When you sit beside someone calm and trusted, and simply breathe near them, something in your own nervous system moves toward their frequency. You are not fully separate from the people you are closest to. Not at the level of biology, not at the level of rhythm. The steadiness you have felt in the presence of someone you love was never only a feeling. It was your body learning from theirs. If you have ever lost someone or something you deeply loved, you may have noticed something strange in the texture of that loss. That grief, at its core, is not entirely distinguishable from love, that they occupy the same space, that the ache of missing someone contains, still visible beneath it, the particular warmth that missing only occurs in the presence of. Grief and love are processed in overlapping brain regions. The research on this is relatively recent, still being refined, but the finding is consistent. The anterior cingulate cortex, regions of the prefrontal cortex, the insula, these areas involved in attachment, in longing, in the felt sense of connection, are also active in grief, which may be why one always carries traces of the other. Grief is not the opposite of love. It is not what love becomes when it fails. It is what love does when the object of it is no longer reachable in the ordinary way. It is love, turned slightly, pressing against an absence, still warm, still reaching, still entirely itself. If you have grieved something, you have also confirmed something, that the love was real, that it reached far enough into you to leave a shape, and that shape, which might feel like loss, is also, in its own quiet way, evidence. Evidence of what you are capable of feeling. Something happens in the moments before you know what is wrong. The room shifts slightly. A conversation takes on a different quality. A silence becomes textured in a way it was not a moment ago. And before you have assembled any of this into a thought, before you have run the evidence or named the concern, the body has already responded. Your palms may have changed. Your breath may have shortened. Something in the chest may have moved without instruction. The feeling of dread often arrives before the brain has identified the threat. This is the nervous system operating at its native speed, which is faster than conscious thought by a significant margin. The amygdala processes sensory information and issues a response before the cortex has finished reading the scene. By the time you think, something is wrong, the body has already been thinking it for several seconds. This is not anxiety inventing threats that do not exist. This is an ancient early warning system, refined over millions of years. that reads subtle signals in the environment and the behavior of others with a precision that conscious attention cannot match. Your nervous system reads the room faster than thought can. So when something in you says, "Pay attention here," before you have any evidence to justify it, that signal deserves a moment of gentle consideration. Your body has been watching carefully. It often sees what the mind has not yet learned to look for. When you do something kind for another person, something changes in the chemistry of both of you simultaneously, not sequentially, not with any delay. At the moment of genuine generosity, the moment when warmth moves from one person toward another, oxytocin is released in the giver and measurably shifts in the receiver as well. The same molecule, the same direction, two nervous systems, briefly synchronized in something the body recognizes as connection. Kindness releases oxytocin in both the giver and the receiver simultaneously. Oxytocin does many things. It reduces fear responses. It increases trust. It deepens the feeling of social bond. It lowers blood pressure. It softens the sharp edges of stress. And it is produced not only in grand gestures, not only in moments of high emotional significance, but in small ones. A door held open with genuine attention. A message sent to say, "I thought of you today." A moment of real listening, without preparing the response. The body does not require the gesture to be large. It requires only that it be real. And here is the part that researchers find quietly remarkable. People who merely witness an act of kindness also show measurable increases in oxytocin. The warmth moves outward, even beyond the two people directly involved. Generosity has a radius larger than its source. It travels through a room without anyone tracking it. Anger wants to move. This is not a moral statement, not an endorsement, simply an observation about what anger is at its physiological core. The emotion prepares the body for action. Blood moves toward the large muscle groups. Energy becomes available. Attention sharpens and narrows. The body is being readied for something. And when that readiness has nowhere to go, when the anger is swallowed rather than expressed or physically discharged, it does not simply dissipate, it recirculates. Anger, when expressed safely, passes through the body faster than anger that is swallowed. Research on this distinguishes carefully between expression and aggression. The goal is not to harm, it is to complete the circuit the body has opened. Physical movement, even something as simple as a brisk walk, a moment of deliberate exertion, gives the arousal somewhere to go. It allows the chemistry to cycle through and clear. The body does not require the anger to win an argument. It requires the energy to finish its journey. Think of a storm that needs to break. The pressure has been building. The clouds are heavy. And what the sky needs is not to suppress the rain, but simply to let it fall, cleanly, and then return to open blue. Movement completes what stillness cannot. And on the other side of the weather, there is often something that feels remarkably like calm. There is a sensation most people know but rarely examine. The feeling of being watched. You are reading, or resting, or moving through a room you believe to be empty, and then something shifts in the quality of your attention. A subtle alertness, a turning of the inner ear towards something that has not made a sound, and you look up, or turn around, and someone is there, or sometimes, no one is. The feeling of being watched activates a real neurological response, even when no one is present. The brain has a dedicated system for detecting social attention. It is ancient and extremely fast, calibrated over millions of years of living in groups where being unnoticed by the wrong entity could be the difference between safety and harm. This system does not require confirmation before it fires. It responds to suggestion, to pattern, to the faintest hint of a directed gaze, which is why eyes in a painting can feel alive, why a photograph of someone looking directly at the camera creates a different quality of presence than one where the subject looks away, why certain rooms, certain arrangements of objects carry a feeling of being inhabited even when they are not. You are exquisitely sensitive to the social world. Your nervous system tracks it constantly, even in sleep, even in the quiet of a room you know to be yours alone. That sensitivity was never a flaw. It was the feature that kept your ancestors alive long enough to become you. Spend enough time with someone, and something begins to happen beneath the level of conversation. Not through any deliberate effort, not through imitation or performance, through something older and more automatic than either of those things. Your mood begins to move toward theirs. Emotional contagion is real and measurable. The facial expressions, vocal tones, posture, and breathing patterns of the people around you are continuously processed by your nervous system, which responds by subtly mirroring them. And that mirroring, that physical approximation of another person's state, feeds back into your own emotional experience. Your mood shifts toward the people around you the way a flame leans in wind. This has been studied in workplaces, in families, in strangers seated near each other on long flights. The emotional state of one person moves, invisibly and without announcement, into the emotional field of another, which means that the company you keep is not simply a social preference, it is a physiological environment. The people you spend most of your time near are, in a very real sense, contributing to the emotional texture of your inner life, not determining it, not overriding it, but participating in it, quietly and continuously, whether or not anyone is aware it is happening. You're never entirely separate from the emotional weather of the people around you, and they are never entirely separate from yours. What you carry into a room matters more than you know. Words are not always what fills the space between two people. Sometimes the most significant communication happens in the absence of words, in the pause between sentences, in the particular quality of a silence that knows it does not need to be filled. Silence between two people who trust each other feels different from silence between strangers. Researchers studying interpersonal neurobiology have found that the nervous system reads relationship not only through content but through texture. The same physical silence, the same absence of sound, produces measurably different physiological states, depending on who is sharing it and what the history between them holds. With a stranger, silence activates a low level of social vigilance. The nervous system quietly monitors for signals, for cues about safety, for information about what this person intends and whether attention is required. With someone deeply trusted, silence can produce something closer to rest. The monitoring softens, the vigilance steps back, the body settles into the presence of the other person, the way it settles into a familiar chair that has learned the shape of it. Safety is not only a thought, it is a physical state the body enters when the conditions are right. And one of those conditions is simply the presence of someone the nervous system already knows. You do not always need to speak to offer someone that. Sometimes the most generous thing is simply to stay. Before a single word has been spoken, before a door has fully opened, the nose has already begun forming a feeling. This is not metaphor. The olfactory system, the network of receptors and pathways that processes scent, has a direct anatomical connection to the amygdala and the hippocampus, the brain's centers for emotion and memory. No other sensory system has quite this directness. Sound and sight travel through relay stations before reaching these deeper regions. Smell arrives almost immediately, bypassing the usual checkpoints, landing in the emotional core before the conscious mind has had time to prepare a response. The smell of a familiar place can trigger an emotion before any memory arrives. You may walk into a space and feel something, a warmth, an unease, a tenderness that has no story attached to it yet, before you remember why. The emotion precedes the memory because the olfactory system reaches the emotional brain first. This is sometimes called the Proust phenomenon, after the writer who described how the smell of a small cake dipped in tea returned an entire lost world to him before any deliberate recollection could have found it. Your nose has a direct line to the feeling self, to the part of you that loved things before it understood them, to the part that still holds, somewhere below language, the precise emotional temperature of every place you have ever called home. There is a form of practice so quiet it barely feels like practice at all. You sit. You think of something you are grateful for. Not quickly, not as a list to be completed, but slowly, with genuine attention, lingering long enough to let the feeling actually arrive, rather than simply naming the category where it belongs. Done this way, over time, something changes. Gratitude practiced slowly and deliberately over time physically reshapes the density of neural pathways. Neuroimaging studies have found that people who maintain a consistent gratitude practice show increased activity and structural changes in regions of the brain associated with reward, moral cognition, and interpersonal bonding. The medial prefrontal cortex, a region involved in understanding others and in positive emotional processing, responds to sustained gratitude practice in ways that are measurable and lasting. The brain is not fixed. It is responsive. It grows toward what it practices. Thankfulness, genuinely felt and regularly returned to, does not simply make you feel better in the moment. It slowly builds a slightly different architecture in the mind, one that is more inclined to notice what is present, what is working, what is quietly sustaining you, before it reaches for what is missing. You are not simply feeling gratitude. You are, slowly and without drama, growing a brain that finds it more easily. One small, genuine moment of noticing at a time, somewhere in the distance between Finland and Japan, across languages that share almost nothing, across cultures that developed in near-complete isolation from each other, a pattern holds. When people are asked to draw where they feel their emotions in the body, to color in a human silhouette according to where activation increases or decreases during different emotional states, the maps they produce look remarkably similar. Anger rises. It fills the chest, the arms, the face. Sadness sinks and hollows the chest, dims the limbs. Love radiates outward from the sternum, in a warmth that spreads upward into the throat and face, and downward into the abdomen. You feel emotions in specific locations in the body that are largely consistent across cultures. This was documented in a series of studies by Finnish researchers who mapped these bodily sensation patterns across thousands of participants from cultures with very different emotional vocabularies and norms. The feeling is not only in the mind, it is in the body. And the body, it seems, feels it in roughly the same places, regardless of the language being spoken or the latitude being occupied, which suggests something quietly significant, that beneath all the difference, beneath every variation of culture and history and language, there is a body that feels in a shared grammar, a grammar older than any of our words for it, and you speak it fluently, even in the dark, even in the silence of a night like this one. There is a cup of something warm nearby, or perhaps only the memory of one. Either way, something in you already knows what this is about. Researchers asked participants to briefly hold a warm cup of coffee before meeting a stranger, and then to rate that stranger's personality. Those who had held the warm cup rated the stranger as significantly warmer and more trustworthy than those who had held a cold drink. The warmth in the hand had migrated, without permission, into the assessment of another human being. Holding a warm cup makes people rate strangers as more trustworthy. This happens because the brain processes physical warmth and social warmth through overlapping neural pathways. The insula, a region involved in both bodily sensation and social emotion, handles both kinds of warmth without always distinguishing between them. You were built by evolution in conditions where warmth and safety were genuinely linked. A warm body nearby meant a living body. A fire meant the group was together. The nervous system learned to associate temperature with social meaning, and that association is so old and so deep that it persists even now, even in a world where warmth is available from a kettle and has nothing to do with another person's presence. The body translates warmth in all its forms through the same ancient channels. So when something warm is placed in your hands tonight, know that somewhere in the oldest part of your brain, a quiet signal is sent. Safe, near, not alone. There is a way that loneliness changes not only how you feel, but how you see. Literally, perceptually. at the level of what information the brain selects from a face and what it decides that information means. Chronic loneliness measurably alters how the brain perceives facial expressions. Research has found that people experiencing prolonged isolation show a heightened sensitivity to threatening or ambiguous facial cues. The brain, deprived of the regular reassurance of safe social interaction, begins to calibrate toward vigilance. It starts reading neutral expressions as potentially hostile. It interprets ambiguity as risk. This is not irrationality. It is adaptation. A nervous system that has been without connection for long enough begins to treat social information the way a body that has been without food treats calories, with urgency, with altered judgment, with a desperation that can distort the very thing it is reaching toward. Isolation changes what the world looks like, which creates a painful loop. The lonelier a person becomes, the more threatening others may appear, and the more threatening others appear, the harder connection becomes to reach toward. If you have ever felt this, if the world has seemed harder to enter during the times you were most alone, that was not a character flaw. That was a nervous system doing its best to protect you, in the only way it knew, from a danger it was not designed to face alone. Hope is often spoken of as though it is a feeling that simply arrives or fails to arrive, a weather pattern beyond personal influence. But the neuroscience of hope tells a different and more generous story. Hope activates the prefrontal cortex, the same region of the brain involved in planning, in imagining futures, in holding multiple possibilities in mind simultaneously, is the region that generates and sustains hope. Which means that hope is not only an emotion, it is a cognitive act, a form of mental work the brain performs when it constructs a pathway between where things are and where they might become. This is why hope can be practiced, why it responds to attention, why the deliberate act of imagining a possible positive future is not wishful thinking in any dismissive sense, but a genuine exercise of the brain's capacity for forward projection. In studies of people navigating serious illness, significant loss, and prolonged uncertainty, the presence of hope, even modest and uncertain hope, was associated with better outcomes, more active coping, and measurably lower levels of stress hormones. The brain works to produce hope, and it can be asked to, not forced, not manufactured into something brittle and performative, but gently invited, given the small materials it needs. A single believable possibility, one plausible next step. That is sometimes enough for the brain to begin building the rest of the road. There are tears that sting the eyes when something gets in them. A speck of dust, a sharp wind, the vapor of something cut in a kitchen. And then there are the other kind, the ones that come from inside, from grief, from relief, from something so beautiful it cannot be held any other way, from the particular exhaustion of having carried something too long, from the unexpected grace of being understood. These two kinds of tears look nearly the same from the outside, but they are chemically distinct. Emotional tears contain higher concentrations of stress hormones than tears caused by irritants. Specifically, emotional tears have been found to contain elevated levels of adrenocorticotropic hormone, one of the key chemicals released during stress, as well as leucine enkephalin, a natural painkiller. The body packages difficulty and releases it through the eyes. This is why crying so often ends in a feeling of relief that seems disproportionate to what has been expressed. Something genuinely left the body. Something was carried to the surface and released through the only opening that was available. The tears were not only emotional, they were biological. The body found a way to set something down that the mind had been holding for longer than it knew. And afterward, in the quiet that follows, something is measurably lighter. Not fixed, not resolved, but lighter. Something shifts in a person after they have stood at the edge of something vast, after they have watched the sun disappear behind a mountain range that was old before any human name existed for it, after they have heard a piece of music that seemed too large for the building containing it, after they have held a newborn and felt the particular quality of awe that has no adequate word in any language. the feeling of awe increases prosocial behavior. In a series of careful studies, people who had recently experienced awe, whether through nature, music, or witnessing extraordinary human courage, showed measurably greater generosity towards strangers. They donated more. They volunteered more time. They rated the needs of others as more important relative to their own. Researchers believe this happens because awe reliably produces what they call a diminished sense of self. Not in a distressing way, in a releasing way. The feeling of encountering something genuinely vast makes the ordinary boundaries of the self feel temporarily more permeable. The gap between you and another person narrows. When you feel small in the presence of something enormous and beautiful, you do not become less. You become briefly, gently, more connected to the people around you. After being moved by something vast, people become measurably more generous, which means that beauty is not a private experience. It travels outward from the person who receives it, quietly, without announcement, into the space between them and everyone they will meet afterward. Wonder is contagious, and its direction is always toward each other. There is a particular ache that most people recognize from the first weeks of a new place. The way a university dormitory feels foreign in September. The strange quality of a new city in the first month, when the streets have not yet learned your name and you have not yet learned theirs. The specific longing for a place that still exists but that you cannot return to without it costing something. The feeling of homesickness peaks in the first few weeks away and then gradually eases. Research on displacement and adjustment has mapped the emotional arc of homesickness with some consistency. The intensity tends to be highest in the earliest period, when everything unfamiliar is simultaneously new and wrong. The nervous system is working hard to orient itself, to find the landmarks that signal safety, and in their absence, it reaches back toward what it knows. But the body is also extraordinarily adaptive. Given time, given small moments of belonging, given even one person or one street corner or one cafe that begins to feel like it recognizes you, the nervous system begins to build new anchors. The reaching back gradually softens, not because the old place is loved less, but because the new place is slowly, quietly, becoming home. Longing has a natural arc. The body knows how to move through it. And the ache, which felt permanent in its first days, was always a process, not a verdict. It was the sound of your nervous system doing the difficult, patient work of making room for somewhere new. There is a thought experiment the mind performs without being asked. Something happened, perhaps long ago, perhaps recently, and in the aftermath, the mind does not simply accept what occurred and move forward. It constructs an alternative, an adjacent possible, a version of events where the choice was different, where the timing shifted by minutes, where a single variable changed and everything that followed changed with it. And in that constructed alternative, a feeling rises. Regret is the only emotion that becomes more intense when you imagine the alternative outcome more vividly. This was demonstrated in research on counterfactual thinking, the mental habit of running simulations of roads not taken. The more specifically you imagine the alternative, the more detailed and plausible you make the version where things went differently, the sharper the regret becomes, which creates a particular kind of suffering unique to the human mind. The suffering not of what happened, but of what never happened. The grief of a possibility that existed only in the space of a moment and then closed forever. No other animal is thought to do this. The capacity for counterfactual thinking is considered one of the distinctly human features of cognition. It comes with the gift of planning, of learning from error, of being able to imagine better futures. And it comes with this quiet cost. The mind makes its own weight from what never was. Be gentle with yourself when it does. It is not weakness. It is the price of being able to imagine at all. The heart does not always know which feeling it is holding. Before a performance, the body enters a state of heightened arousal. Before something genuinely joyful, something long awaited and deeply wanted, the body enters a nearly identical state. The heart rate rises. The breath quickens. The hands may tremble slightly. The attention narrows and sharpens toward the approaching moment. Joy and anxiety share a physiological arousal signature. The same elevated cortisol, the same adrenaline pattern, the same activation of the sympathetic nervous system. From the inside, in the early moments before interpretation arrives, they are physiologically almost indistinguishable. What separates them, as with fear and excitement, is largely the story the mind constructs about what the arousal means. Researchers have found that people who can recognize this overlap, who can pause in the moment of high arousal and acknowledge that the body does not yet know which feeling this is, tend to navigate both anxiety and joy with greater ease. The recognition itself creates a small space, a breath of distance, between sensation and response. You do not always have to resolve the feeling immediately. Sometimes the most honest position is to notice that the heart is running fast and to wait, gently, to see what color the moment turns. Not every racing pulse is a warning. Sometimes it is the body recognizing, before the mind can, that something it has been waiting for is finally, quietly, arriving. There is something in you that is more authored than you may have believed. The general emotional tone you return to between the peaks and valleys of experience, the baseline from which your feelings rise and to which they eventually settle back, is called your affective baseline. And for a long time, researchers believed it was largely fixed, genetic, given at birth, and relatively immovable across a lifetime. But the picture that has emerged from decades of longitudinal research is considerably more hopeful than that. Your emotional baseline is partly genetic, but significantly shaped by daily habit and attention. What you practice noticing, where your attention rests by default, whether you move through a day scanning for threat or scanning for sustenance, whether you end the day rehearsing what went wrong or spending even a few moments with what held. These are not minor variables. They accumulate. They compound across days and weeks and years into something that functions like a different inner climate. You have more authorship over your emotional life than the deterministic story suggests. Not total authorship, not the kind that allows you to simply decide to feel differently and have it be so. The genetics are real. The history is real. The nervous system carries what it carries. But within all of that, there is genuine room that belongs to you, room that grows slightly larger every time you choose, even once, even imperfectly, to tend to it. There is a moment in conversation when something rare occurs, not when you are agreed with, not when you are praised or validated in the way that produces a pleasant surface warmth, but when you feel, with genuine certainty, that another person has truly understood what you were trying to say, has held the specific shape of your meaning without reshaping it into something more comfortable for them. Feeling understood by another person activates the brain's reward system in the same region as romantic love. The ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens, regions associated with deep pleasure and motivation, and the feeling of reward, respond to genuine understanding in the same way they respond to the early stages of falling in love. Being truly heard is one of the deepest pleasures the mind can receive. Not the most dramatic, not the most intense, but among the most enduring and among the most sustaining. This is why good conversation can feel, afterward, like nourishment. Why certain exchanges leave you more energized than when you began, rather than depleted. Why the memory of being understood by someone, truly understood, can be returned to for warmth long after the conversation itself has ended. You have given this to people without always knowing it. The times you stayed quiet long enough to let someone finish their whole thought. The times you asked the question that showed you had been listening carefully. The times you said, simply, "Yes, I understand," and meant it. Those moments were gifts of the highest order, and somewhere, in someone, they are still being kept. Somewhere in the body right now, a rehearsal is underway, not of movement, not of language, but of feeling. Before a difficult conversation, the body has already begun to feel versions of how it might go. Before a flight, Before an appointment, before any event that carries emotional weight, the nervous system runs previews. It generates approximations of the emotional states it anticipates encountering. The body rehearses future emotions before events occur. This is what anxiety is, at its physiological core, not irrationality, not malfunction, but the nervous system doing what it has always done, preparing the organism for what might come by preloading relevant emotional and physiological states. Anxiety is the body living in a moment that has not arrived yet. The difficulty is that the nervous system cannot always distinguish between the rehearsal and the performance. The stress hormones released in anticipation are real stress hormones. The elevated heart rate is a real elevated heart rate. The body experiences the preparation as experience, which is why the anxious imagination can be so exhausting. Not because the feared thing has happened, but because the body has, in some measurable sense, already lived through several versions of it before breakfast. If you are tired tonight in a way that seems disproportionate to what actually occurred today, it may be that your body has been traveling, visiting futures that never arrived. Rest now. The only moment the body ever actually lives in is this one. There is a gesture so simple it seems almost too small to matter. A hand placed on a shoulder, fingers briefly wrapped around a wrist, an arm around someone who needed it before they had words for needing anything. Touch from a trusted person measurably reduces the experience of pain. In controlled studies, participants who received hand-holding from a trusted partner during painful stimuli reported lower pain intensity than those who experienced the same stimuli alone. Brain imaging showed reduced activity in regions associated with pain processing. Not simply a change in how the pain was reported, but a change in how it was neurologically registered. A hand on your shoulder is a genuine analgesic. The mechanism runs through the vagus nerve, through the release of oxytocin, through the calming of the threat detection systems that amplify the experience of pain when the nervous system is in a state of high alert. You cannot always fix what hurts in someone you love, but presence is not nothing. Touch, when it is welcome and trusted, is not a consolation prize in the absence of a solution. It is its own form of intervention, its own form of medicine. The body responds to being held the way a frightened breath responds to a quiet room. It slows, it steadies. It remembers, somewhere below thought, that it is not carrying this alone. Somewhere in the architecture of the brain, a room is being built, not metaphorically, literally. In the developing brain of a child who is seen clearly and responded to with warmth and consistency, neural pathways associated with emotional regulation are being laid down in patterns that will influence how that person navigates feeling for the rest of their life. Children who are emotionally validated grow neural architecture that supports better long-term emotional regulation. When a child's emotional experience is acknowledged, when a caregiver says, not simply stop crying, but I see that you are sad and that makes sense, something happens in the developing prefrontal cortex. The connections between the emotional brain and the regulatory brain are strengthened. The child learns, through repeated experience, that feelings can be named, can be tolerated, can be moved through without destroying anything. That learning becomes structure. The room you live in now, the interior space from which you navigate your emotional life, was partly built by the people who witnessed you when you were small. This is not blame. This is not destiny. The brain remains plastic throughout life, and the architecture of emotional regulation can be rebuilt, slowly and with care, at any age. But it is worth knowing, worth pausing with. How you were witnessed as a child quietly built the room you live in now, and how you witness the children around you is building theirs. What you offer in that direction matters more than anything else you will do today. There is something the body knows that the mind sometimes forgets, that you cannot be simultaneously physically relaxed and emotionally anxious. Not fully, not in the same breath. The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state, and the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight state, cannot both be dominant at the same time. They operate in dynamic balance, one rising as the other recedes, like two ends of a seesaw that cannot both be up simultaneously. This means that the body holds genuine, not absolute authority, not the kind that can override a deeply entrenched response in a single breath, but real authority, real influence, available in every moment. A deliberately slow exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system. A hand placed over the heart and held there gently shifts the body toward regulation. Physical stillness, maintained with intention, sends a signal upward to the brain that the environment is safe enough to rest in. The body and the feeling cannot fully coexist in opposition. So when the feeling is too large and the mind too crowded to think its way through, the body offers another door. Breathe out slowly. Let the shoulders drop. Feel the weight of where you are resting, the particular pressure of support beneath you. The feeling may not leave immediately, but it will find it harder to stay at full volume in a body that has chosen, gently and deliberately, to be at peace. Time leaves its mark on everything it touches. On stone, slowly. On wood, in rings. On water, in the particular way a river bends after years of moving in one direction. And on a face. The emotion you feel most frequently throughout your life slowly shapes the resting expression your face settles into. The muscles of the face, used repeatedly in the same configurations, develop what researchers call habitual muscle tone. The lines that form around the eyes of someone who has laughed often are different from the lines that form around the eyes of someone who has spent decades in careful vigilance. The particular set of the mouth in repose, the default quality of the brow when nothing specific is being expressed, these are not simply genetics or gravity. They are autobiography. They are the accumulated record of what the face has been asked to do most often across the years. There is something in this that deserves to be held gently. The face you will have in 30 years is being shaped, in part, by what you practice feeling now, by what you return to, by what your inner life considers its home frequency. Joy leaves its trace, not as a guarantee, not as a simple formula, but as a quiet and genuine possibility. The face that looks back at you in the mirror decades from now will carry something of the emotional life you chose to inhabit most fully. What a reason to tend to it carefully. What a reason to let the warmth in. A book opens. A few pages pass, and something that was not there before begins to happen. You are no longer simply reading. You are, in some genuine sense, inside another life. The specific gravity of a fictional character's grief. The precise quality of light in a room you have never entered. The texture of a decision being made by someone who does not exist, and yet the weight of that decision lands in you as if it were your own. Reading fiction activates real empathy circuits. Brain imaging studies have found that reading narrative fiction, particularly fiction that places the reader inside the perspective of another character, activates the same neural regions involved in processing real social situations. The temporoparietal junction, involved in understanding other minds. The dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, involved in perspective taking. The same systems that engage when you try to understand a real person in a real conversation. A story is not practice for life. It is a form of it. Every character you have ever inhabited through reading has expanded the range of inner lives your nervous system knows how to navigate. Every fictional grief has made your capacity for real empathy slightly larger. Every invented joy has given the brain one more template for recognizing the real thing when it arrives. The books you have loved have changed you in ways that never fully announce themselves. They are woven into how you understand other people, into how you understand yourself, quietly, permanently, page by page. There is a skill that sounds deceptively simple, naming what you feel, not in the broad strokes of fine or sad or stressed, but with genuine precision, the specific shade of what is actually present, the difference between loneliness and solitude, between irritation and grief, between anxiety and the particular ache of caring so much about something that its uncertainty is physically uncomfortable. People who name their emotions with precision tend to experience them with less intensity. This finding, which researchers call emotional granularity, has been replicated across multiple studies and populations. People with a richer emotional vocabulary, those who can distinguish between 30 nuanced emotional states, rather than collapsing everything into a handful of broad categories, show measurably lower physiological reactivity to difficult emotions. Language is a form of emotional regulation. The act of finding the precise word for what you feel brings the prefrontal cortex gently into the conversation. It creates a small but genuine distance between the sensation and the response, not suppression, not dismissal, simply a moment of clear-eyed recognition that says, "This is what this is. I can name it. I can hold it. It does not have to hold me." The next time something rises in you, and you reach for the first word that comes, consider pausing and asking whether there is a more accurate one, not to make the feeling smaller, but to make your relationship to it cleaner, more spacious, more yours. Something opens when safety arrives, not all at once, not with any announcement, but gradually, the way a room warms when a fire is lit, the way a held breath releases when the door is finally found in the dark. When you feel safe, your nervous system opens. The polyvagal theory, developed by researcher Stephen Porges, describes the nervous system as existing in distinct states depending on its assessment of the environment. In states of perceived threat, the system contracts, attention narrows, creativity diminishes, the capacity for genuine connection shrinks, because the resources that would otherwise go toward curiosity and warmth are redirected toward vigilance and protection. But in states of genuine safety, the system opens. Curiosity becomes possible, play becomes possible. The kind of creative thinking that requires the willingness to be wrong, to try something and not know how it will go, becomes available in ways it simply is not under threat. Connection deepens. Learning accelerates. The full range of what you are capable of becomes accessible. This is why the environments in which you feel most yourself, most free, most generative, are so worth protecting and returning to. They are not luxuries. They are the conditions under which the best of you becomes possible. You deserve to spend as much of your life as you can arrange in spaces where your nervous system feels that it can open, where it can breathe, where it can simply be, without the cost of constant watching. Inside the brain, there is a structure called the hippocampus. It is shaped, loosely, like a seahorse, which is where it gets its name, and it is involved in memory formation, in spatial navigation, in the consolidation of experience into something that can be retrieved later. It is a quiet, essential piece of the architecture of a self. Chronic stress shrinks it, not as metaphor, physically, measurably. Prolonged exposure to elevated cortisol, the primary stress hormone, causes the hippocampus to lose volume over time. Neurons that could have connected and fired together are lost. The capacity for certain kinds of memory formation and emotional regulation diminishes. This sounds alarming, and it would be, if it were the whole story. But rest, connection, and care can measurably restore it. The brain remains open to healing. Research on neuroplasticity has found that the hippocampus is one of the few regions of the adult brain where new neurons continue to be generated throughout life, a process called neurogenesis. Exercise supports it. Sleep supports it. Genuine social connection supports it. Practices that reduce chronic stress, practiced consistently over time, allow the structure to recover density and function. The damage that stress does is real, and so is the repair that care makes possible. Your brain is not a fixed record of everything that has worn it down. It is a living structure, still listening, still growing toward whatever nourishes it. Still, even now, capable of becoming something slightly more whole. There is a quality of attention that changes when you step outside. Not dramatically, at first. A slight softening at the edges of whatever you were carrying. A minor but real shift in the quality of breath, a sense of the peripheral world expanding gently outward as the walls of whatever enclosed space you were in recede. The feeling of being in nature, even briefly, lowers cortisol and slows the heart. Research across multiple disciplines has converged on this finding with remarkable consistency. Time in natural environments, including modest urban parks, reduces markers of physiological stress. The heart rate slows, blood pressure drops slightly. Activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, decreases. The body remembers something ancient about where it came from. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, the natural world was not a place people visited for relaxation. It was the entire context of existence. The nervous system was calibrated to it. The rhythms of wind and water and the irregular patterns of natural environments, which are neither too chaotic nor too uniform, appear to engage a mode of attention that is restorative rather than depleting. Natural fractals, the self-repeating patterns of coastlines and tree branches and clouds, have been shown to reduce physiological stress markers by significant margins simply through visual exposure. The world you came from is still in the body. And when you return to it, even briefly, even in a small square of park between tall buildings, something in you recognizes it. Something exhales. Something ancient and quiet comes home. There are people who lose someone they love and report, in the weeks that follow, not the overwhelming wave of feeling that the word grief might suggest, but something closer to its absence. A numbness, a strange flatness, a sense of moving through the world as if separated from it by a thin, transparent membrane that lets everything in visually but somehow mutes it. The colors are there, the sounds are there, but they arrive at a remove. People in grief often report the absence of emotion more than its presence. This is not a failure to feel. It is not evidence that the love was insufficient, or that something is broken in the person carrying it. Numbness is the mind's protective buffer. The nervous system, confronted with a loss too large to process all at once, narrows the aperture. It rations the grief. It allows in only as much as can be metabolically survived in a given moment, and it insulates against the rest until the system has recovered enough capacity to hold more. This is not a sign that love has gone. It is often, in its own quiet way, a sign of how vast the love was, of how much space the lost person occupied in the nervous system of the one who is left. The feeling will come, in its own time, in its own waves, in its own season. And when it does, it will carry, alongside the ache, the unmistakable warmth of something that mattered beyond measure. There is a peculiar architecture to wanting. You plan the trip for months. You imagine the meal, the conversation, the moment of arrival. You carry the anticipation through ordinary days, and it makes them warmer, gives them a direction, lends the waiting a quality of richness it would not otherwise have. And then the thing arrives. The meal is delicious, the moment is real, and yet something in the pleasure of it feels slightly smaller than the pleasure of looking forward to it. The anticipation of a pleasure is neurologically more activating than the pleasure itself. The dopamine system, which drives motivation and reward seeking, is more active during the approach to a desired outcome than during the outcome itself. The wanting circuitry fires more intensely than the having circuitry. You are built to reach, and the reaching is its own joy, distinct from and in some ways exceeding the arrival. This is not a design flaw. It is the engine of a life. A nervous system that was satisfied simply by having things would stop moving toward new experience. The reaching keeps you in motion. It keeps the future warm and worth moving toward. But it also means that the journey deserves as much of your attention as the destination. That the weeks of looking forward to something are not merely the prelude to the real experience. They are part of it. Fully, genuinely, neurologically part of it. There is a voice inside the mind that most people would never use toward a friend. A voice that notices every failure with precision and every success with suspicion. That holds the mistakes longer than the kindnesses. That applies a standard of judgment to the self that would seem cruel if applied to anyone else. And yet this voice is often treated as honesty, as rigor, as the reasonable cost of taking yourself seriously. Self-compassion activates the same soothing circuits in the brain as compassion toward another. When you place a hand over your heart, when you speak to yourself with the tone you would use towards someone you genuinely care for who is struggling, when you acknowledge difficulty without amplifying it into evidence of unworthiness, the brain responds. The same oxytocin pathways, the same parasympathetic activation, the same reduction in cortisol and threat response that occurs when you offer genuine comfort to another person, these are available to you in relation to yourself. You can be a source of calm for yourself. This is not self-indulgence. Extensive research by Kristin Neff and others has found that self-compassion is associated with greater emotional resilience, lower anxiety, less depression, and better recovery from failure, not worse. The kind voice is not weakness. It is the voice the nervous system was designed to receive. And it has been waiting, patiently and without urgency, to hear it from you. There is a smile that changes the room, not the polite one, not the one worn as social punctuation, the one that arrives in the eyes before it reaches the mouth, the one the face did not plan. A single genuine smile, the kind that reaches the eyes, generates a small but measurable positive physiological response in the person who receives it. The zygomaticus major and the orbicularis oculi, the muscles that produce what researchers call a Duchenne smile, create a visual signal that the human nervous system reads with extraordinary speed and precision. It is processed in the amygdala within milliseconds, categorized as safe, as warm, as non-threatening, before any conscious thought has registered that a face has changed. The body responds before the mind has finished looking. Heart rate shifts slightly. Skin conductance changes. A small cascade of social trust begins, built from a single expression that lasted less than a second. You have sent this into the world more times than you know. In corridors and across tables and over the heads of crowds, small, genuine moments of warmth that landed in nervous systems that needed them, that shifted someone's physiological state by a fraction, that said in the most ancient language available, "You are safe here. I am not a threat. I am glad you exist." You may never know which of those smiles mattered most, but some of them mattered enormously. They still do. There are moments when something rises in you that is not quite happiness, and not quite gratitude, and not quite love, though it contains traces of all three. It arrives when you witness someone do something extraordinarily good, a stranger helping another stranger with a patience that costs them something, a person telling the truth when the lie would have been so much easier, an act of courage so quiet that most of the room does not even notice it is happening, and in witnessing it, something lifts in your chest. The emotion of elevation, the feeling that rises when you witness extraordinary human goodness, is distinct from happiness and appears across all studied cultures. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who named and studied this emotion carefully, found that elevation produces a specific physical sensation, a warmth in the chest, a feeling of opening, an increased desire to become better oneself, to act more generously, to close the gap between who you are and who you sense you could be. Unlike happiness, which turns attention toward the self and what is going well, elevation turns attention outward and upward, toward the best of what people are capable of, toward a version of humanity that makes the world feel briefly redeemable in ways it does not always manage to feel on ordinary days. You have felt this, perhaps in a film, perhaps in a story, perhaps watching someone in your own life do something that asked more of them than they had to give. And in the feeling, without any effort on your part, you became slightly more capable of it yourself. Goodness travels that way, through the chest, through the witness, forward into the world. Somewhere between who you are and who you might become, there is a quality that does not announce itself and does not arrive quickly. It grows. Emotional intelligence is not a fixed trait. For decades, the popular understanding of intelligence treated it as largely innate. You had what you were born with. And while you could learn facts and skills, the deeper capacities of mind were thought to be relatively stable across a lifetime. But emotional intelligence, the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and use emotions effectively in yourself and in your relationships with others, follows a different pattern entirely. It responds to attention. It develops through experience and reflection, and the willingness to be uncomfortable enough to look clearly at how you actually function, rather than how you prefer to imagine you do. It grows slowly, steadily, and without a ceiling. Research tracking emotional intelligence across the lifespan has found that it tends to increase with age in ways that raw cognitive processing speed does not. The accumulated experience of navigating real emotional complexity, of having been wrong about what someone needed, of having miscalculated the impact of your own feelings on others, and then had to reckon with that, this experience builds something that cannot be shortcut. You are not finished. Whatever your capacity for emotional understanding is today, it is not your limit. Every difficult conversation you have ever stayed present for has added to it. Every time you have paused before reacting and asked what is actually happening here, you have grown it slightly. The ceiling does not exist, and the growth does not stop until you do. There is a question that science has circled for years without quite being able to settle. Why do some people cry at beauty? Not at sadness, not at loss, but at something simply and overwhelmingly beautiful. A piece of music that resolves in a way that seems to reorganize something inside the chest. A landscape at a particular quality of light. A sentence in a book that arrives so precisely that the eye has to stop moving and simply hold it for a moment. Scientists still cannot fully explain why some people cry at beauty. The bridge between aesthetic experience and tears remains genuinely uncharted territory. There are hypotheses. Some researchers suggest it involves a flooding of the reward system, a pleasure so acute it spills over into the same physiological response as extreme emotion. Others propose that beauty triggers a confrontation with transience, that what moves us most is partly the recognition that this moment, this light, this chord, will pass and cannot be kept. But no single explanation has proven sufficient. The mystery stays open, and perhaps that is fitting. Perhaps the fact that beauty can move the body to tears without the mind fully understanding why is itself a kind of proof, evidence that you are more than your explanations of yourself, that something in you responds to the world at a depth that language and logic have not yet learned to reach. You are larger than what you can account for. And sometimes, in the presence of something genuinely beautiful, the body quietly confirms this. Somewhere, at the boundary between waking and sleep, the mind loosens. The grip of ordinary identity, the careful management of what you think and feel and allow yourself to note, the border between the inner world and the outer world becomes permeable in ways it is not during waking hours. This threshold state is called hypnagogia, and in it, something interesting happens to emotion. The moment just before falling asleep sometimes releases a cascade of feeling. Hypnagogia loosens the boundary between feeling and dream. Images arise that carry emotional weight without clear narrative context. A sense of falling that holds, somehow, a quality of grief. A warmth without a source. A fear that is also, strangely, beautiful. Feelings that do not follow the ordinary rules of emotional logic, that exist in combinations the waking mind would immediately separate and categorize. This is thought to occur because the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational oversight and emotional regulation, is among the first regions to begin powering down as sleep approaches. Without its organizing influence, the emotional and imagistic layers of the mind surface more freely. What arises in those last moments before sleep may be closer to the raw material of your inner life than almost anything you experience during the day. Not truer, necessarily, but less edited, less managed. Simply present, the way feeling was before you learned to sort it into something more orderly. There are losses that belong only to one person and pass with them. And then there are losses that belong to everyone at once. the death of a public figure who meant something to a generation, a collective tragedy that arrives in the same moment for thousands of people simultaneously. A shared grief that finds strangers looking at each other in the street with a recognition they cannot quite articulate but feel completely. Collective grief, the shared mourning of strangers, appears to bond communities more lastingly than collective celebration. Researchers who have studied communities before and after shared loss versus shared victory have found a consistent pattern. The bonds formed through grief tend to run deeper and endure longer than those formed through celebration. The neural systems engaged by shared sorrow involve a level of mutual vulnerability, of genuine exposure, that shared joy does not always require. Loss may be the deeper glue. This does not make grief better than joy. It simply makes it more binding in a particular way. There is something in the shared acknowledgement of difficulty, in the moment when a community drops its performance of resilience and simply stands together in the presence of what is gone, that creates a quality of connection that is very difficult to manufacture any other way. You have been part of this, in small ways and perhaps in larger ones. Every time you have mourned alongside someone, even a stranger, even briefly, you have participated in one of the oldest forms of human bonding, the kind that holds when almost nothing else will. There are things you carry that you did not choose to carry, tendencies that arrived before you had the language to question them, responses that feel so native, so much like simply the way things are, that it takes considerable attention to notice they were learned rather than given. Some emotions appear to transfer between generations epigenetically. Research in the relatively new field of epigenetics has found that certain stress responses, certain patterns of fear and vigilance, can be passed from parent to child not through behavior or modeling alone, but through changes in gene expression that occur in response to significant emotional experience. Studies in mice have demonstrated that fear responses conditioned in one generation can appear in subsequent generations that were never exposed to the original conditioning. Research in humans is more complex and more contested, but the evidence of transgenerational trauma, carried in the body rather than in explicit memory, continues to grow. The fears and griefs of ancestors may leave a faint fingerprint in the body. This is not destiny. Epigenetic changes can be modified. The patterns can be interrupted. The body is not a prison made of inherited feeling, but it may be worth sitting quietly with the recognition that some of what you carry has a longer history than your own life, that some of your tenderness, some of your caution, some of the things that move you without clear explanation may be older than you, may be love, handed down in the only language the body has always spoken. There is a feeling most people have had at least once, the uncanny sense of having been somewhere before when you know, with certainty, that you have not, of recognizing a conversation before it has finished, of arriving somewhere new and finding it already familiar in a way that has no rational explanation. Déjà vu. The feeling of déjà vu has an emotional component that science has not yet fully separated from its perceptual one. The experience is thought to arise from a misfiring in the memory systems, a moment where the brain's familiarity signal activates without the corresponding retrieval of an actual memory. But what is less well understood is the emotional texture of the experience. The uncanny feeling, the slightly unsettling but also strangely compelling quality of false recognition. Familiarity and feeling are wound together in ways still being unraveled, because familiarity itself is partly emotional. The feeling of recognizing something, of having encountered it before, carries warmth, carries safety, carries the particular comfort of the known. And when that feeling fires without a memory to justify it, the emotional content arrives anyway, floating free of any narrative anchor. You feel familiar with something that is, in fact, entirely new. And in that small gap between feeling and fact, something genuinely mysterious lives. A reminder that the inner life does not always follow the rules the outer world would prefer it to, that sometimes the feeling simply arrives, already knowing. There are emotions that only exist between people. not inside one person and then communicated to another, but arising in the space between, requiring both parties to exist at all, unable to be felt in solitude in any complete sense. Certain emotions appear to arise only in the presence of other people. The particular quality of feeling seen by someone who did not have to look, the specific warmth of being welcomed without having to earn it, the emotion that arises when someone you have long admired treats you as an equal, the feeling of being in a room full of strangers and suddenly, unexpectedly, belonging. These may have no private version. They exist only in the space between nervous systems, only when two people or more are present and something passes across the gap, only in relationship. This is one of the reasons that isolation diminishes the emotional life, not only quantitatively, by reducing how often certain feelings occur, but qualitatively, by making entire categories of experience simply unavailable. Emotions that require another person cannot be approximated in solitude. They can be remembered, anticipated, imagined, but they cannot be felt in the full sense without the presence of someone else. You need other people not only for comfort, you need them for access to certain parts of yourself, parts of you that only become available when another person is present, and the space between you opens into something neither of you created alone. Think of the moment you first encountered something that moved you so completely that you have never quite returned to who you were before it. A piece of music heard at exactly the right age. A landscape that arrived when you were still open enough to be permanently changed by it. A book found in the exact season of life it was written for. The experience of awe in childhood may shape the architecture of wonder available in adult life. Developmental researchers studying the long-term effects of awe experiences in early life have found that children who encounter genuine awe, those who are given access to vastness and beauty, and the particular quality of humility that comes from encountering something larger than the self, develop neural and psychological structures that make wonder more accessible throughout life. What moved you early still lives quietly in how you see. The moments of childhood awe are not simply pleasant memories. They may be foundational. They may have laid down pathways that determine how readily the adult brain can access the feeling of being moved. How available wonder is as a default orientation toward the world. If you can remember one such moment, hold it for a breath. The sight that silenced you. The sound that made time stop. The thing you encountered before you had language for what you were feeling and so simply felt completely. That moment built something in you, something that is still here, still capable of being moved. Still, even after everything, open. There are feelings that arrive with no return address, no triggering event that can be identified afterward, no mood that preceded them, no story that accounts for the particular quality of what arrived or why it chose this moment to arrive rather than any other. There are documented cases of emotional experiences that appear to have no identifiable cause, a wave of grief that passes through and leaves without explanation, an unexpected and inexplicable joy that surfaces during a perfectly ordinary afternoon, a tenderness that arises in relation to nothing specific and everything at once. The feeling arrives complete, with no story attached to it. Researchers who study affect have found that baseline emotional states fluctuate more than people generally realize, influenced by factors as varied as gut microbiome activity, hormonal rhythms, the quality of the previous night's sleep, and atmospheric pressure. Much of what shapes how you feel on any given day is operating entirely below the level of conscious awareness, which means that the story you tell about why you feel the way you feel is sometimes accurate and sometimes a narrative constructed after the fact to explain something the body was already doing for its own reasons. You do not always need a reason for what you feel. Sometimes, the feeling is simply weather, moving through, genuine and real and yours, without requiring an explanation to justify its existence. You are allowed to feel what you feel before you understand it. And sometimes, understanding never fully arrives. And the feeling was no less real for that. There is a piece of music playing somewhere in the world right now that is making someone cry. Not because they are sad, not because the song is about something difficult, but because a minor chord resolved in a way the ear had hoped for and not quite expected, because a melody dropped into a register that reached something below the ordinary level of listening. Music in a minor key does not reliably produce sadness. This is one of the findings that surprised researchers who assumed the relationship between musical mode and emotional response would be consistent and universal. It is not. Emotional responses to music vary so significantly across individuals that the pattern dissolves under close study. A piece that produces grief in one listener produces something closer to reverence in another. Something that sounds like lamentation in one cultural context carries celebration in another. A song that undid a person completely at 23 may leave them unmoved at 40, not because the music changed, but because something in the listener shifted in ways neither they nor the music could have anticipated. What this means is that your relationship to music is genuinely yours. It is not a correct or incorrect response. It is the precise intersection of your particular nervous system, your history, your body's current state, and a sequence of organized sound that met all of those things at a specific moment and did something irreversible. Every piece of music that has ever moved you was a private event, even if you were surrounded by thousands of people who were also moved. Each of you was somewhere entirely different. Each of you took something home that belonged only to you. There is a word in Portuguese that has resisted full translation into English for centuries: saudade. The deep, bittersweet longing for something beloved that is absent, perhaps lost, perhaps impossible, perhaps never fully possessed in the first place. And there is a word in Japanese, mono no aware, the gentle pathos of impermanence, the bittersweet recognition that beautiful things pass, and that this passing is part of what makes them beautiful. And there is ame, from the same language, the feeling of being able to presume upon another's benevolence, of being safe enough with someone to be completely unguarded. The emotion researchers call kamamuta, the feeling of being moved to the point of warmth and tears by witnessing love or unity or sudden belonging, may be one of the most universal human experiences, yet it has no name in English. Some feelings are older than any tongue that tries to hold them. This matters because the absence of a word for something does not diminish the reality of the feeling. It simply means that the feeling has been living in the body, without the scaffolding of language to support it, without a name to call it by when it arrives, or to explain to another person why the chest suddenly filled with warmth at something as simple as watching strangers help each other in the rain. You have felt things for which you have no words. This is not a gap in your vocabulary. It is evidence of the depth of your inner life, evidence that you feel further than language has yet learned to follow. No one fully understands why kindness feels good, not in any complete sense, not in a way that accounts for the depth and reliability of it. The reward is so consistent, so cross-cultural, so present even in anonymous acts where no social benefit to the giver could possibly accrue, that its origin remains one of the quiet mysteries of the emotional life. There are hypotheses. Evolutionary accounts suggest that altruism benefited groups even when it cost individuals, and that the pleasure of giving evolved as a mechanism to encourage cooperative behavior. Neurological accounts point to the activation of the ventral striatum, the same reward region that responds to food and warmth and social connection. But none of these accounts fully explains the particular quality of the feeling, the warmth of it, the way it seems to reach down into something that feels less like a reward being dispensed and more like a recognition, as if the act of genuine kindness puts the person in brief alignment with something they were always meant to be doing, something the body recognizes not as novelty but as return. Why kindness feels good remains genuinely open. And perhaps the most honest position is simply to notice that it does. That, without being told to, without calculating any return, a part of you reaches toward the well-being of others and finds, in that reaching, something that functions very much like coming home, quiet, unmistakable, real. Even now, as you rest in this particular stillness, something is happening that requires no effort and no instruction from you. Your body at rest still hums with feeling, not the sharp peaks of emotion in motion, not the high arousal of fear or the bright flush of joy, but something quieter and more continuous. A baseline emotional tone that researchers call core effect, the felt sense of being alive that underlies every more specific emotional experience. It has two primary dimensions: how pleasant or unpleasant the feeling is, and how activated or calm the body feels. And at any given moment, even in sleep, even in the most profound rest available to a human body, the needle is somewhere on both of these scales. Baseline emotion is not the absence of sensation. It is the quietest version of it. This means that even in your most still moments, you are not emotionally empty. You are simply feeling at a lower volume. The emotional life does not pause when the dramatic content recedes. It continues, softly, like the hum of a building at night, when all the ordinary activity has stopped and you can finally hear the systems that were always running beneath it. What is your baseline feeling right now? Not the thought about how you feel, the feeling itself, the texture beneath the thinking, the temperature of simply being here, in this body, in this quiet. Whatever it is yours, and it is enough. Simply to be here, feeling it, is enough. There is a word that carries weight in almost every language: forgiveness. It is often discussed in moral terms, as something owed or withheld, as a decision about the other person, about what they deserve, about whether the account has been sufficiently settled. But the body has a different relationship to forgiveness than the moral framework does. Forgiveness, even partial, even private, even never communicated to the person who caused the harm, measurably reduces the body's stress hormones. Research on forgiveness and physiology has found that the act of moving toward forgiveness, not condoning what happened, not forgetting it, not pretending it was acceptable, but releasing the sustained physiological arousal of resentment, produces genuine changes in cortisol levels, blood pressure, and immune function. It is something the body receives, not only something the mind decides. The body does not distinguish between righteous anger, held for good reasons, and any other form of chronic stress. It simply registers the sustained activation of the threat system and bears the physiological cost of it, regardless of whether the cause was justified. Forgiveness, in this light, is not primarily a gift to the person who caused harm. It is a gift to the body that has been carrying the weight of what they did. You do not have to resolve anything tonight, but if there is something you have been carrying that is heavier than you need it to be, know that the body is ready, whenever you are, to set a little of it down. There is a state that most people encounter briefly and then move past without fully recognizing what it was. The moment when the wanting stops, not because the thing was not worth wanting, but because, in some particular instant, what is present is simply enough. The meal is exactly sufficient. The evening is precisely what was needed. The conversation arrived at a natural end that felt complete rather than interrupted. The feeling of enough, genuine sufficiency, is one of the rarest emotional states in the modern world, and one of the most deeply restful. Researchers studying hedonic adaptation, the process by which people return to a relatively stable level of satisfaction, regardless of what they acquire or achieve, have found that the experience of genuine sufficiency is increasingly difficult to access in environments designed to sustain perpetual wanting. Every designed interface, every curated feed, every system built around attention and consumption is calibrated to prevent the feeling of enough from arriving, because enough is where engagement ends. But the body knows what enough feels like. It is a specific physiological state, a settling, a dropping of the forward lean of perpetual seeking, a moment where the nervous system stops scanning the horizon and simply rests in the present coordinates. You have felt it, perhaps in the last minutes of a meal shared with someone you love, perhaps at the end of a day that asked exactly the right amount of you. perhaps in a moment of stillness so complete that the wanting simply forgot to continue. That feeling is available more often than the world would prefer you to believe. It is already here, waiting just beneath the reaching. Two feelings occupy the nervous system like weather systems moving through the same sky. Sometimes they coexist for a time, edges overlapping, neither quite dominant. But sustained in the body over time, one tends to displace the other. Gratitude and resentment cannot occupy the nervous system simultaneously. Not because one is morally superior to the other, though that may also be true, but because they are physiologically antagonistic. Gratitude activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and restore state, the condition of openness and ease. Resentment activates the sympathetic nervous system, the threat state, the condition of vigilance and contraction. The body cannot fully be in both at once. Over time, whichever one is practiced more, whichever one is returned to more often, whichever one the mind reaches for first when it scans the landscape of a day, that one gradually expands to fill more of the available space. This is not a command to feel grateful when what is present is genuinely difficult. That would be a form of emotional suppression, and the body knows the difference between a feeling that has been genuinely found and one that has been performed over the top of something real. But it is an invitation to notice, at the edges of difficulty, what is also true, what is also present, what quiet sustenance the day offered alongside whatever it took. One finding gratitude does not erase the difficulty. It simply refuses to let difficulty be the only thing. Every night, without instruction, without effort, without any conscious participation from you, your brain does something extraordinary. It sorts the emotional experiences of the day, the sharp ones and the subtle ones, the ones that landed with full impact and the ones that grazed the surface and seemed to leave nothing behind, are gently processed during sleep, moved from temporary holding in the hippocampus toward longer-term integration in the cortex. Sleep is the moment when emotional memories are gently processed and integrated. Research by Matthew Walker and others has found that REM sleep in particular plays a crucial role in emotional memory consolidation. During REM, the brain replays emotional experiences in a neurochemical environment that is lower in noradrenaline, the stress-related neurotransmitter, than during waking hours. This altered chemistry allows the emotional charge of the memory to be reduced while the factual content is retained. Night is not empty of feeling. It is where feeling finds its place. This is thought to be why people often feel differently about a difficult experience the morning after than they did the evening of. Why sleep-deprived people show significantly elevated emotional reactivity. Why the old advice to sleep before making a difficult decision carries genuine physiological wisdom beneath its common-sense surface. The night is working on your behalf right now. Every difficult thing you have lived through has been gently sorted, gently filed, gently stripped of some of its sharpest edges by a brain that loves you enough to do this without being asked. Rest now. Let it continue. There is a state of being that gets very little attention in a culture oriented toward peak experience. Not happiness exactly. Not the bright, activated, effortful quality of happiness pursued and achieved and displayed. Something quieter. The emotion of contentment has a distinct neural signature from happiness. It is quieter, slower, and reaches deeper. Contentment activates the orbitofrontal cortex and regions associated with reward in a pattern that is lower in arousal than happiness, but higher in positive valence. It is the feeling of the right amount, of the fitting together of things, of a life that is not performing, but simply living. Happiness, in its peak experience form, requires activation. It spikes and recedes. It is memorable precisely because it stands out from the background of ordinary experience. Contentment does not stand out. It is the background, the quality of a life whose texture, in its ordinary moments, is quietly good, whose default is ease rather than distress, presence rather than grasping. Research on well-being has found that people tend to overestimate how much they will enjoy peak positive experiences and underestimate the cumulative value of sustained contentment. The moments they thought would matter most often matter less in retrospect than the quiet consistency of days that were simply, without drama, good. You may be closer to contentment than you think. It may be as near as the breath you are taking right now, the weight of the blanket, the particular silence of this hour. Simply here, simply this. There is a thread that runs through every study of what makes a human life feel most worth living. It is not the number of peak experiences, not the absence of suffering, not the accumulation of any particular kind of achievement or recognition. Feeling connected to something larger than oneself, a community, a tradition, a practice, the night sky, measurably buffers the nervous system against stress. Research on meaning and well-being has consistently found that the sense of being part of something that extends beyond the individual self is one of the strongest predictors of psychological resilience and long-term emotional health. Not happiness, resilience. The capacity to move through difficulty without being permanently diminished by it. This connection does not have to be religious, though for many people it is. It does not have to be grand. It can be as specific as a long friendship, as quiet as a daily practice, as simple as the felt sense, available to anyone who steps outside on a clear night and looks up, that you are a small and temporary and entirely necessary part of something that has been unfolding for longer than any mind can hold. You belong to something larger than your own story. You always have. The community of everyone who has ever lain awake in the small hours, feeling what you are feeling right now, aware of their own smallness and their own aliveness in the same breath. You are part of that. You have always been part of that. And that belonging asks nothing of you tonight. It is simply, quietly, already yours. There is a gesture so simple it seems almost too small to be medicine. Place your hand over your heart, not dramatically, not with any performance of it. Simply lift one hand and let it rest, gently, over the center of the chest. Feel the warmth of your own palm through whatever you are wearing. Feel, if you are still enough, the faint movement of the breath beneath it. The simple act of placing your hand on your own heart and breathing slowly activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This has been measured. The gesture, combined with slow, deliberate breathing, particularly an extended exhale, shifts the autonomic nervous system toward its rest and restore state. Heart rate variability increases, which is a marker of nervous system flexibility and resilience. Cortisol begins to ease. The threat detection systems in the brain receive a signal that is difficult to fake and impossible to argue with. The body responds to its own gesture of kindness. This is not a placebo. The skin-to-skin contact of the hand, even your own hand, activates the same pressure receptors involved in the calming response to being held by another person. The warmth of the palm communicates safety to the nervous system through channels that bypass thought entirely. You carry within you the capacity to soothe yourself, not to fix everything, not to dissolve what is genuinely difficult, but to offer the body a signal it recognizes and responds to. A signal that says, you are not in danger right now. You are held. Even if only by yourself, even if only for this breath, you are held. Try it now, if you like. The hand, the heart, the slow exhale. Notice what shifts. There is a question that sounds simple but opens into something vast. What makes a life feel worth living? Not what makes it comfortable, not what makes it pleasurable, or impressive, or free from difficulty, but worth living. The feeling, at the end of a day or a decade, that the time was well spent, that something mattered, that the living was not simply endured but genuinely inhabited. Long-term emotional well-being is more closely associated with meaning than with pleasure. This finding has emerged from multiple streams of research and has proven remarkably robust across cultures, ages, and life circumstances. Pleasure, the direct positive experience of enjoyable sensation and circumstance, contributes to well-being but does not sustain it through difficulty. A life organized primarily around the avoidance of discomfort and the pursuit of pleasant experience tends to become, over time, oddly hollow. The pleasures stop landing with full weight. The hedonic treadmill accelerates, meaning, by contrast, sustains. The sense that what you do matters to someone beyond yourself, that your presence in the world makes a difference that would be felt in your absence, that you are participating in something larger than the management of your own comfort. The life that feels most worth living is not always the most comfortable one. It is the one where the difficulty had a direction, where the effort pointed towards something that deserved it. You already know what those things are for you. They are the things that make the tiredness feel different at the end of the day. The good kind of tired. The kind that means you were somewhere that mattered. There is an assumption built into the way most people think about age and emotion, that the emotional life diminishes with time, that the peaks become lower, the colors less vivid, the capacity for joy gradually eroded by loss and familiarity, and the slow accumulation of disappointment. The data suggests something entirely different. Older adults across many cultures report more positive emotional experiences than younger ones. Research tracking emotional well-being across the lifespan has found that what psychologists call the positivity effect increases with age. Older adults show a measurable preference for emotionally positive information over negative, spend more time in positive emotional states, and show greater emotional regulation than younger adults. Emotional life improves with age in ways that surprise those who have not yet arrived there. Laura Carstenson's socio-emotional selectivity theory proposes that as people perceive their remaining time as more limited, they become more intentional about where they direct their attention and their relational energy. They release what is not serving them more readily. They invest more fully in what matters most. They stop spending emotional resources on conflicts and comparisons that younger adults find difficult to let go of. The result is not diminishment. It is a kind of clarity, a distillation of what is actually worth feeling, worth spending a day on, worth carrying into the limited and luminous time that remains. You are moving towards something, not away from it. The emotional life ahead of you is not smaller than the one behind. It may be, in the ways that matter most, more fully inhabited. There is a particular kind of belonging that has nothing to do with location. No specific address, no coordinates on any map, no building that contains it, or season that reliably produces it. The feeling of being at home in a body, in a relationship, in a moment, is itself an emotion, distinct and real, with its own gentle physiology. Researchers studying the phenomenology of belonging have identified this feeling as something more than the absence of discomfort. It has a positive signature, a quality of ease that is not simply the removal of friction but the presence of something actively welcoming. The nervous system in a state of genuine belonging shows reduced threat response activity, reduced self-monitoring, reduced the vigilant checking of how one is being perceived that consumes so much energy in environments where belonging feels uncertain. When you are truly at home somewhere, you stop watching yourself. You simply are. This feeling can arrive in the most unexpected places and refuse to arrive in the most expected ones. A city that claimed you immediately. A person in whose presence you were fully yourself before you had any reason to be. A practice that made the body feel, finally, like something you inhabited rather than managed. The feeling of home is not a place. It is a physiological state, one the nervous system can enter anywhere the conditions are right. And part of what you are doing tonight, lying quietly in the dark, is giving your nervous system exactly those conditions. You are home right now, in the only place home ever truly lives. There is a detail about tears that feels, when you first encounter it, almost too intimate to hold. That what the face produces in grief and what it produces in joy look, from the outside, so nearly identical that a photograph cannot always tell them apart. And yet the body knows. Tears of joy and tears of sadness are chemically distinct. Research analyzing the molecular composition of different kinds of tears has found measurable differences in their chemistry. Tears of grief contain higher concentrations of stress hormones and manganese. Tears of joy carry a different balance, one that reflects the underlying neurochemical state that produced them. The body knows the difference even when the face looks the same. This matters because it speaks to something deeper than expression. The face may be legible only in context, only with the full information of what led to the tears and what they mean to the person producing them. But the body, at the level of chemistry, is always being precise. It does not confuse what it is feeling. It simply produces the same outward sign for very different inner states, which is itself a kind of wisdom. A reminder that the most human experiences, the ones the body marks with tears, tend to be the ones that exceed the capacity of any single word to contain them. Both grief and joy are too large for ordinary expression, so the body offers the same one, and trusts the person witnessing to look for the context, to look for the whole story, to see clearly enough to understand which kind of rain this is. There is a word that does not get spoken often in a world oriented toward the pursuit of happiness: equanimity. Not the absence of feeling, not a stoic flatness that keeps everything at a careful distance, but something more subtle and more difficult to achieve. A steadiness that holds all weather, that can be moved without being swept away. That meets difficulty without contracting and meets joy without grasping. The emotion that most consistently predicts long-term well-being is not happiness, but equanimity, the quiet steadiness that holds all weather. This has emerged from longitudinal studies following people across decades and assessing not only how often they experience positive emotion, but how they navigate the full range of emotional experience over time. Those who report the highest sustained well-being are not those who feel happy most often. They are those who can feel fully, across the entire spectrum, without being destabilized by any particular point on it. They cry, they grieve, they feel fear and frustration, and the particular exhaustion of caring deeply about things that do not always cooperate. And they return, without excessive drama, without the story that this particular difficulty is proof of some permanent condition. They return to a center that holds. Equanimity is not built quickly. It is not a decision made once. It is built in the small moments of choosing, again and again, to feel what is real, without adding the weight of what is catastrophic, to hold the weather, without becoming it. There are people you love who are not in the room. Perhaps they are across a city, or across an ocean, or across something much wider and more permanent than geography, and yet something in the thinking of them is warm in a way that does not entirely feel like only memory. When you think of someone you love, your brain releases the same compounds as when that person is present. The oxytocin, the dopamine patterns, the activation of the brain's social reward circuitry, these do not require the physical presence of the beloved to begin. The thought itself, the genuine imagining of the person, their voice, their specific quality of laughter, the way they occupy a room, is sufficient to trigger a meaningful portion of the neurochemical response that their actual presence would produce. Love does not require a body in the room. This is not a consolation. It is not a lesser version of the real thing being offered to make absence more bearable. It is simply a fact about how love is stored and accessed. The person you love has left a template in your nervous system, a pattern so detailed and so integrated into the architecture of how your brain processes the world that summoning them does not feel like imagination. It feels like a kind of presence, because in the neurological sense, it is. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is thinking of you, and in their nervous system, you are there, fully, warmly, entirely yourself. There are trees older than most human institutions, stones that were already ancient when the first cities were built, mountains that watched the entire span of recorded human history as something that happened very recently and very briefly on their slopes. The feeling of being in the presence of great age, an ancient tree, a mountain, an old building, activates something in the brain that researchers call temporal awe. the feeling that time is vaster than a single life. Temporal awe is distinct from ordinary awe in that its primary object is duration rather than size or complexity. It arises from the confrontation with timescales that dwarf the human lifespan so completely that the mind cannot truly hold them, only gesture toward them. And in that gesture, something happens. The ordinary urgency of daily life, the pressing sense that this moment matters enormously and must be managed correctly, diminishes. The self, which spends so much energy maintaining its boundaries and its continuity and its narrative of importance, becomes briefly, gently transparent. You feel in the presence of something ancient, like a wave in an ocean that has been moving for longer than the wave can imagine. Not diminished by this, released by it. The wave is still real. The wave is still beautiful. The wave is still entirely what it is, but it is held, now, in something so much larger than itself that the holding itself becomes a form of rest. You are held in time in exactly this way. Always have been, always will be. There is a sound that does something to the nervous system that is difficult to fully explain and very easy to feel. Rain on a roof in the small hours, the low, rhythmic sound of an engine on a long journey, the particular quality of music played softly in another room, the slow, even breathing of someone sleeping nearby. Gentle, repetitive sound activates the same emotional state as being soothed in early childhood. Research on auditory processing and the autonomic nervous system has found that sounds with a specific combination of regularity, low frequency, and moderate volume produce a measurable shift toward parasympathetic activation. The nervous system interprets them as signals of environmental safety, of the absence of threat, of conditions compatible with rest. Some feelings are older than memory. The reason these sounds feel so deeply comforting may be that they resemble the earliest sonic environment a human being ever knows. The rhythmic sounds of the womb, the steady heartbeat, the low, continuous hum of a living body containing another living body. Sounds that meant, before any word existed for safety, that you were safe. The comfort you feel in these sounds is not nostalgia exactly. It is something older and more bodily than that. It is the nervous system recognizing a frequency it learned before it had a name, before it had anything at all except the feeling of being held and warm and entirely surrounded by something that meant you no harm. That feeling is available to you right now. In whatever sounds are present in this quiet, listen, it is already here. There is a phrase that lives in almost every language. A broken heart. Not a metaphor borrowed from anatomy and then applied loosely to emotion. A description that the body, in a very real sense, confirms. Emotional pain and physical pain share neural pathways, which is why language for both bleeds together. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region that processes the distress component of physical pain, the part that makes pain feel unbearable rather than merely intense, is also active during experiences of social rejection, loss, and emotional suffering. You say a heart breaks, and somewhere in the brain, it does. Not the organ, but the network, the circuitry that processes hurt fires in patterns that overlap genuinely with what fires when the body is physically harmed. This is why emotional pain is not imagined, not weakness, not something that should be easier to dismiss than physical pain simply because no bone was fractured and no blood was shed. The brain does not classify it as lesser. The brain simply registers pain, and the body, which has no preference for where its suffering comes from, responds accordingly. It wants what any hurt body wants: rest, warmth, the presence of something safe nearby, care that does not ask the pain to justify itself before it is offered. If you have been in that pain recently, or are in it now, let the body receive what it is asking for. It is asking for exactly what it needs. And what it needs is always, simply, to be tended to. There is something the nervous system does when it finally believes it is safe. Not when it is told it is safe. Not when the mind constructs a reasonable argument for why the danger has passed. But when the body, in its own time, through its own assessment of the signals available to it, arrives at the conclusion that the threat is genuinely gone, the nervous system moves toward rest naturally when it feels safe. Stillness is not something you force. It is something you allow. This distinction matters more than it might initially seem. The attempt to force stillness, to command the body into calm through sheer effort of will, is itself a form of activation. It requires energy. It maintains a kind of vigilance, even in the act of trying to release vigilance. But genuine rest arrives the way sleep arrives, not when you pursue it too hard, when you stop fighting the wakefulness and simply lie in the dark and give the body permission to go where it was already trying to go. The nervous system is always moving toward rest, when nothing is pulling it away from rest. It does not need to be instructed. It does not need to be convinced. It needs the conditions, the darkness, the warmth, the absence of demand, the quiet reassurance, received not through words, but through the accumulated sensory information of a safe body in a safe place, that nothing is required of it right now. Nothing is required of you right now. The body already knows this. Let it arrive at what it already knows. Every feeling you have had today has already begun to change. The morning's anxiety, if it was there, the afternoon's frustration, whatever arrived in the evening and settled in the chest like something that intended to stay. The quiet tiredness of a day spent being a person in the world, with all that asks of a nervous system that was never quite designed for this much. Every emotion you have felt today has a chemical trace that moves through the body and then quietly dissolves. Nothing is held forever. The cortisol that flooded the system during a difficult moment has a half-life. The adrenaline that sharpened the senses in the face of something unexpected is already clearing. The inflammation that stress promotes in the body begins to ease when the stress response ends. The chemistry of feeling is always in motion, always completing its cycle, always moving, in the absence of new activation, toward equilibrium. This means that the feelings you are carrying tonight, whatever texture they have, whatever weight they brought to this quiet hour, are already in the process of releasing. Not because you are resolving them, not because you have found the answer, simply because the body knows how to do this, simply because chemistry does not hold grudges, simply because you are lying still in the dark and giving the system the one thing it needs most to do its ancient work, time, and the soft permission to use it. There is a quality of attention that arises in the presence of something beautiful, not the sharp, narrowed focus of a problem being solved, not the scanning vigilance of a threat being monitored, something entirely different in character, a pause. The act of witnessing beauty, a color, a phrase, a face at a particular angle in particular light, creates a moment of genuine cognitive pause, a small silence inside the mind, and that pause is itself a form of rest. Researchers studying the neural correlates of aesthetic experience have found that encounters with beauty produce a brief but measurable reduction in the activity of the default mode network, the system responsible for self-referential thinking, for the internal monologue that narrates and evaluates, and worries and plans. In the presence of something genuinely beautiful, the voice inside that is always talking, always assessing, always managing the gap between how things are and how they should be, goes quiet, just for a moment. But that moment is real, and in that moment, something in you that is very tired gets to rest. Beauty is not a luxury the emotional life tolerates. It is a form of medicine the mind has been dispensing to itself for as long as there have been minds capable of being moved. You have given yourself this medicine tonight, in small doses, perhaps, in the quality of attention you brought to a voice whispering something true in the dark. It was enough. It is always enough. There has never been a version of you that was entirely alone in what you felt. This is not comfort offered loosely. It is a fact about the nature of emotion itself. Your emotional life has never been entirely separate from the lives around you. Feeling is always partly the world breathing through you. The emotions that move through you are not generated in isolation. They arise in response to other people, other living things, the quality of light on a particular afternoon, the sound of rain, the memory of a voice. They are shaped by every nervous system you have ever been near, by every relationship that left a mark, by every moment of genuine contact with another living creature. You are not a sealed container producing feelings in private. You are a permeable, responsive, endlessly influenced participant in an emotional ecosystem that extends in every direction and has been running for longer than any single life can measure. The longing you have felt is made of the same material as the longing felt by everyone who has ever looked out a window at dusk and felt that particular quality of ache that has no clean name. The tenderness you carry has cousins in every language ever spoken. The fear, the wonder, the grief, the love, these are not yours alone. They are yours to feel. But they belong to the whole long story of what it has meant to be human. And that story, which you are part of, whether you remember it or not, has always been moving, slowly and with great difficulty, and with moments of extraordinary beauty, towards something. You are part of that movement, even lying still, even in the quiet, especially now. Right now, as you lie in the quiet, your nervous system is moving, slowly, without effort, without instruction, slowly, gently, toward its natural state of ease, the way water settles after the hand is lifted. You can feel this if you are still enough, not as a dramatic shift, not as the arrival of some new and different state, but as a gradual softening of what was slightly tight, a barely perceptible loosening in the places where the day accumulated, a quality of heaviness in the limbs that is not the heaviness of burden but the heaviness of a body finally releasing its vigilance. The nervous system does not need to be rewarded for this. It does not need to be thanked. It simply does what it was always designed to do when the conditions allow it. It comes home, to the resting state that is its origin and its destination, the state it has been trying to return to every time the world pulled it away. The state that is not a peak experience but something quieter and more fundamental than any peak. Simply being, simply breathing, simply here. You have spent today being a person in the world. That is not a small thing. It asks more of a nervous system than most people ever stop to acknowledge. The constant processing of other people, of environments, of demands and possibilities and small losses and small kindnesses, all of it moving through you, all of it requiring a response, all of it leaving some small trace. Tonight, the processing slows. The traces settle. The water finds its level. Somewhere in the world right now, someone is feeling what you are feeling. Not the same. Never exactly the same. The specific texture of your tiredness is yours. The particular quality of what you are carrying into this night belongs to no one else. But close enough. The emotion you feel as you begin to fall asleep, that soft, unguarded moment when the day's performance has ended and what remains is simply the feeling of being alive. That feeling is shared right now by thousands of people lying in the dark, in rooms you will never enter. Researchers struggle to name this feeling. It may simply be the feeling of being alive, with nothing asked of you. Not the activated alive of urgency and demand, but the quiet alive of a body breathing in the dark, of a mind that has, for this moment, set down the work of managing itself and simply rests in the fact of its own existence. There is no word in English that fully holds this, but you know the feeling. You are in it now. And so, right now, in rooms across this world, are others, in languages you do not speak, in climates you have never felt on your skin, in lives that are entirely different from yours, in almost every particular, lying in the dark, breathing, feeling the quiet weight of being alive with nothing required of them. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. Every person who has ever lived has felt something close to what you are feeling right now. Not the same. The feeling is always particular, always colored by the specific life it moves through, the specific body it inhabits, the specific night it is finding its way through, but close enough to call it shared. The person who lay awake in a room that no longer exists, in a century you can only imagine, feeling the particular quality of tiredness that follows a day of caring about things. The child who felt the first approach of sleep as something vast and slightly strange, a dissolving of the boundaries of the self that was frightening and also, somehow, beautiful. The old woman who felt, at the end of a long life, the particular piece of a body that had done its work and was finally, gently, releasing the effort of it. The young person who felt, in the dark of a night very much like this one, the first full awareness of their own consciousness. The startling recognition of being here, being this, being alive and feeling and aware and unable entirely to believe it. All of them lying in the dark, all of them breathing, all of them part of the same long, astonishing story of what it means to feel. You are the latest chapter of something ancient, and the feeling you are feeling right now is your contribution to it. Your small, irreplaceable, entirely necessary note in the longest song that has ever been sung. And yet, the fact that emotions exist at all remains one of the deepest unanswered questions in all of science. Not how they work. That is being mapped, carefully, year by year, with instruments that can see inside the living brain and measure the chemical signals of a single moment of grief. But why? Why did the universe, which is mostly cold and dark and indifferent, and has been so for longer than any feeling creature has existed to notice, produce beings who feel wonder, grief, tenderness, and awe? Why did evolution, a process that operates entirely through survival and reproduction and has no interest in beauty or meaning or the particular ache of missing someone, produce creatures capable of being moved to tears by a piece of music? Why is there feeling at all? Science does not have an answer. Philosophy has circled it for millennia without closing the distance. And perhaps the most honest position is to sit with the question, not as a problem to be solved, as a fact to be held, the fact that you are here, that you feel, that the universe somehow became something that is aware of itself, that mourns, that loves, that reaches toward beauty, that lies awake at night wondering about its own existence. This is not ordinary. Whatever else is true about the world, this is not ordinary, and you are part of it. Entirely, irreplaceably, part of the most astonishing thing the universe has ever done, and here you are, feeling, breathing, still, which may be the most astonishing fact of all, not in spite of everything, because of it, because of the long chain of feeling creatures that preceded you, each one carrying their grief and their wonder and their love through the dark until they could carry it no further and passed it forward to you, who are here now, who felt things today that no one else felt in quite that way, who carried what you carried, who arrived at this quiet. Your nervous system is settling now, slowly and without effort, into the rest it has been moving toward all day. The feelings of today are finding their places. The body is doing the patient, generous work it always does in the dark. There is nothing more required of you tonight. Not understanding, not resolving, not arriving at any particular conclusion about what any of it means. Simply this: the breath moving in, the breath moving out, the particular quality of this silence, the weight of a body held by whatever holds it, the feeling of being alive, small and vast at once, temporary and entirely here, uncertain and somehow, in this moment, enough. You felt things today. That means you were here. That means you were real. That means the world was touched, in ways too small to measure and too important to dismiss, by the fact of your presence in it. Rest now. The world will still be here when you return to it, and so will the wonder, and so will the belonging, and so will everything that tonight reminded you was already, quietly, yours. I hope you sleep well and dream softly. Good night.